Have you ever wondered what would happen if both Tanjiro and Nezuko became demons? How would this affect Demon Slayer story as we know it? Well, for starters, during the original plot, we see Tanjiro heading out to town to sell charcoal. But in this alternate timeline, as Tanjiro is about to leave for the town, a strange and ominous man stands in his way, covered with the scent of blood. As Muzan locked eyes with the young man in front of him, rage started to bubble up from within. Seeing the earrings Tanjiro wore made the Demon King remember some traumatizing memories, and like a soldier with PTSD, Muzan instinctively kills everyone inside the household except for Tanjiro and Nezuko, as an act of revenge for the original owner of the earrings. Muzan decides to turn their siblings into demons, forcing them to consume his blood. Nezuko and Tanjiro lose their consciousness, unable to bear the strain of transformation. Now, as Tanjiro awakes, he is greeted by the scent of his family's dead bodies, with only Nezuko left breathing, completely unaware of his current situation. All he could remember was that a strange man attacked him and his family, and so as quickly as he could, Tanjiro carried Nezuko and headed out to ask for help. While traveling, Tanjiro slips, falls off a cliff, causes him to lose consciousness again. Arriving late to the scene, Giyu finds himself in front of the Kamado household with dead bodies spread across the floor. Upon careful observation, he notices footprints leading away from the house. Eventually, Giyu comes across the siblings, passed out in the snow and covered in blood, with Nezuko barely breathing. When Tanjiro comes back to his senses for the second time, he sees Giyu helping Nezuko recover, patching up her wounds as best he could. But this is where everything starts to go sideways. With Tanjiro gaining consciousness again and Giyu rushing to his aid, the young man noticed that something weird was happening inside his body. Slowly but surely, the effects of Muzan's blood were consuming him. Right then and there, Nezuko opened her eyes and slowly stood up, busy helping Tanjiro, like a wolf silently stalking its prey. Nezuko carefully approached the Hashira, who was completely unaware of her presence, and in one swift motion, Nezuko lunged and sank her teeth into Giyu's neck. As death flashed before Giyu's eyes, he panicked and pushed Nezuko away from him. Drawing his sword, Giyu collected himself and focused on the demon that stood in front of him. As Giyu and Nezuko stared at each other, waiting to make their moves, Tanjiro caught wind of the scent of blood coming from Giyu's neck. The smell of fresh blood triggered Tanjiro's demonic instincts, almost instantly, as Giyu poured all his focus into gaining his composure, stopping the bleeding from his neck, and as well as fending off Nezuko's swift and heavy attacks. He was unaware that yet another danger was swiftly approaching him. In the blink of an eye, as Giyu was about to behead Nezuko, his arms went flying away. Only then did he notice that Tanjiro also became a demon. Overcome by fear with all his strength, Giyu ran as fast as he could, in hopes that he would survive the Kamado siblings. But this only gave excitement to the newly formed demons, giving them the thrill of the hunt. Losing huge amounts of blood as he ran, Giyu's fate was already sealed, and in the end the siblings caught up to him and devoured him, leaving only his torn clothes and parts of his body as evidence. As news of the Water Hashira's death shook the Demon Slayer Corps down to its very core, Shinobu Kocho took it upon herself to hunt down the Kamado siblings and bring justice to Giyu's death. Not long after the siblings murdered Giyu, they started regaining their rationality and memories, thereby recalling the strange man that appeared on their doorstep. The death of their family, and them being forced to consume blood, flooded their minds, as well as the guilt after committing murder. With all this new information, Tanjiro and Nezuko were now fueled with anger, and swore that they would take revenge on the man who turned them into monsters. As all these events unfolded, Kibutsuji Muzan, the man responsible for the Kamado siblings' despair, noticed a weird anomaly. Try as he might, he could never feel any connection toward the siblings, unlike other demons. This left the Demon King puzzled big time. Now I know you're wondering why this is happening, and to answer your curiosity, the reason why Muzan cannot feel any connection towards the siblings and how Tanjiro and Nezuko were able to regain their rationality is because of their connection with the creator of the sun-breathing technique. Now that the siblings regained their rationality, Tanjiro and Nezuko would avoid contact with humans and maybe even start hunting animals to quench their thirst for human blood. Yeah, I know what you're thinking, and yes, I completely ripped off that hunting animals as a substitute for humans idea from Twilight, but whatever. As the siblings travel through the forest, they come across Lady Tamayo's clinic when they notice that something is terribly wrong. Tanjiro and Nezuko feel uneasy with the place. Burying their anxiousness, they proceed to enter the clinic and meet Lady Tamayo herself, as well as Yushiro, Lady Tamayo's apprentice. After learning about the Kamado siblings' suffering, Lady Tamayo tells her story and reveals to them the identity of the man responsible for their current situation. Through this, an alliance was made between them, born from their shared hatred for Kibutsuji Muzan, the Demon King. As Lady Tamayo, Yushiro, Tanjiro, and Nezuko were discussing their plans moving forward, Susumaru and Yahaba tried to ambush them but failed. Aware of their enemy's presence and intent, as well as who ordered them to assassinate Lady Tamayo, escaping was no longer an option, and the only way to resolve this conflict was to kill Susumaru and Yahaba. Now, what's interesting here is that during their voyage through the forest, Nezuko and Tanjiro actually encountered other demons which they took care of without a problem. This served as their training, and through their continuous battles with these demons, Nezuko and Tanjiro were able to master their new demonic powers. Recalling the Hinokami Kagura that his father taught him, Tanjiro fused its movements with his demonic powers, therefore enhancing his skills by a lot. While Nezuko, like in the original plot, was already strong enough to contend with Susumaru with her strength alone, needless to say, Susumaru and Yahaba's defeat was inevitable, and by the hand of Kamado's siblings and Lady Tamayo, their once proud bodies turned into ash. Well, in a nutshell, all the arcs and events in the original story would never happen, and the flow of the Demon Slayer story would shift drastically. For example, the death of Giyu Tomioka would shift the balance of power between the Hashira and 12 Demon Moons, all in favor of Muzan's company. Another significant consequence of this is that if Tanjiro does become a demon at the beginning of the series, during the final selection arc, only Zenitsu, Genya, Inosuke, and Kanao would make it through and go on to become official Demon Slayers. This would mean that Genya, Zenitsu, and Inosuke could emerge as the new trio, which would not make sense in my opinion because Inosuke and Genya would probably constantly argue because of their explosive personalities. The next major change would be the Mount Natakumo arc. Since I mentioned earlier that Genya would be the one replacing Tanjiro in the trio, the chances of him losing his life against Rui, the Lower Moon 5, would be possible because, well, as we all know, Tanjiro barely, and I mean barely, survived against Rui, and it was all thanks to Giyu, who arrived just in time that he survived. But remember, in this alternate storyline, Giyu is dead. So not unless Sanemi or maybe Gyome would arrive in the scene, just like Giyu did in the original plot, Genya's death is practically sealed. But for the most part, everything would flow as intended, with only Genya and his possible savior against Rui becoming the major change in this arc. Another arc that would be subjected to a major change would be the Mugen Train arc, with Nezuko and Tanjiro's absence. I highly think that Enmu's plan would go without a hitch, so in this arc, not only Rengoku, but also Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Genya would die. And Enmu, with all the bodies in the train, would possibly grow stronger, and maybe even become an Upper Moon. After the Mugen Train arc with Zenitsu, Inosuke, and Genya out of the picture, we proceed to the Entertainment District arc where Tenjin is left with only Kanao to assist him in his rescue mission, which needless to say would become a tragedy, ending with the Sound Hashira and Kanao's death by the hands of Kutaro and Daki. I mean, seriously, this what-if plot is just dark, and I don't know why, but yeah, now we know how valuable Tanjiro is as a Demon Slayer. Also, without Tanjiro becoming a Demon Slayer, the Demon Slayer mark would be forever lost, apart from the fact that you have to survive a life-or-death situation to unlock it. You must also be exposed to someone who already has it. So no, Tanjiro means bye-bye Demon Slayer mark, which also means that during the Swordsmith Village arc, Mitsuri and Muichiro would never be exposed to Tanjiro, and with Genya and Nezuko out of the picture, Han Tengu and Gyoku would become successful in destroying the village and eliminating 2 Hashiras, killing 2 birds with 1 stone indeed. Also, the discovery of Nezuko being able to conquer the sun would still happen, but this time, Muzan would be unaware of this fact because he has no established connection with the Kamado siblings. Now, the Hashira training arc would be the highlight of the story because in this part of the plot, Tanjiro and Nezuko would have grown exponentially thanks to Lady Tamayo's help. Also in this part of the story, it is revealed that the Kamado siblings have already perfected their blood demon arts, and that they have reached the levels of the Upper Moons, not by consuming humans, but by consuming demons. During this time, Lady Tamayo decides that the best course of action to defeat Muzan would be to work with the Demon Slayer Corps. With their ability to walk under broad daylight, Tanjiro, Nezuko, Lady Tamayo, and Yushiro visit the Demon Slayer Corps. Upon meeting with the Hashiras and Kagaya Ubuyashiki, they instantly revealed the fact that they were demons, which was met with hostility. Of course, especially since Nezuko and Tanjiro are the ones responsible for Giyu's death. Now, I won't go into full detail on what happens next, but eventually, they all come to an agreement to form an alliance in exchange for the Kamado siblings' heads as soon as they defeat Muzan, to which Tanjiro and Nezuko agree. Moving fast forward in time, after a thorough investigation, they manage to pinpoint Muzan's exact location, but with Lady Tamayo's knowledge. They first target Nakime, whose blood demon art is the most troublesome, after taking care of their greatest obstacle, the remaining Hashiras, Sanemi, Gyome, Shinobu, and Obanai, along with Tanjiro, Nezuko, and Lady Tamayo, storm Muzan's dwellings effectively, cornering the Demon King. Without Nakime and the Upper Moons to help him, Muzan was put in a tough spot dealing with all these opponents by himself. Without any choice, Muzan tried to put up a fight, but with Tanjiro and Nezuko's help, the Hashiras were able to fight without a problem. Muzan, who was clearly exhausted from constantly regenerating his wounds, was frustrated by the fact that he could not deal any significant damage to the Hashiras because Nezuko and Tanjiro acting as their vanguard, blocking all his hits and pinning him down when they got the chance. With his stamina depleted, the Demon King was exhausted to the point where he could no longer fight back. Watching Muzan in a helpless state, Tanjiro picked up a Nichiren blade and walked towards the man responsible for all this bloodshed. Without saying a word, Tanjiro, who saw all of Muzan's 7 hearts and 5 brains, swiftly ended the Demon King's tyranny, ending the war between humans and demons once and for all. Unfortunately, a deal is a deal, so to atone for their sins, Nezuko and Tanjiro accepted death with open arms. If you like this video, smash that like button, subscribe and click the notification bell, but before you go, click the video on the screen for more Demon Slayer content.